One of the memories that I believe all of us as Africans on this stage right now would recall is the Rwandan genocide of 1994. And as an indication of what tribalism can lead to, I want to ask our Yali fellow from Rwanda, who has had an opportunity to see his country move from instability, conflict, genocide into an era of peace and relative prosperity. I know you're focused in on the environment. Can you tell us a little bit about, given the background, if you will, of your country, what gaps you still see there that can be filled through new approaches learned in this program and what you intend to do moving forward?
I'm 23 years old, and the reason why I'm saying my age right here is because I just want to say that I was born amidst the aftermath of the genocide that happened in Rwanda in 1994. So currently, we used to say that Rwanda is 24 years old, because actually when the genocide was happening, the country was entirely destroyed. So the rebuilding process started right after the genocide. So being born amid the crisis was like a call to action to everyone who was in the country, because we didn't have infrastructure at that time. Schools were destroyed. In fact, everything well destroyed. So growing up in such despair was not actually for me to remain in such despair, but rather for me to think about what I can do to help my society move forward. And luckily I got an opportunity to join the Mandela Washington Fellowship, where I actually got an opportunity to advance my business, which was actually to help my society solve the energy crisis, because that was like the least thing I can do to help my community. And it was challenging for me to implement this idea, because Rwanda is unique in a way such that we don't have too much resources. When you look at soil, the soil is acidic. When you look at the rivers, so you can build like anything you want for electricity or nuclear, anything. So we don't have those resources. But the only resources that Rwanda has is our people. And I'm one of those people. So I said, maybe we can find other means to make energy for the people instead of like staying in this kind of darkness. And then I ventured into starting a project which was actually to transform the waste, which was causing a problem, into renewable energy that people can use for cooking and everything, so that you can not also rely on the fact that we are coming from the darkness of the genocide and then go into, fossil fuels and other type of unfair energy sources, but rather to benefit from those little resources that we had in making renewable energy for ourselves, but also benefiting the entire world.
Many of us are familiar with the saying that if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And so we know that if we are talking about administrative process and we're talking about governance, it's absolutely essential that there's adequate research, because without research, how can we implement? And that takes me to our next Yali Fellow, who is very much at home here in Kenya. And I want to ask you, because you focused in on research and research strategies, and as relevant as that is becoming, kind of as Africa moves into a new frontier of development and peace, can you talk to us a little bit about what guided you in the direction of this specialization and what you hope to do with what you've learned?
I was busy making apps and different software solutions, but at the end of the day, I realized the solution I was giving the clients was information, was knowledge that they needed to do to transform their businesses or to grow their businesses or to make more profit. And that gave me, it pushed me to the direction of thinking, what's the importance of research in Africa? Why do we need research? Not just in the development sector, but in the corporate sector with the governments. And the Mandela Washington Fellowship, which I went for in 2014, gave me that opportunity, because with the fellowship I was able to meet people in the public management space and in the civic leadership space. And research was a key thing that was cutting across, that we need to know more about our environment, our context, not just the government, but I myself am in the development sector. If I'm working in education, what are the needs of the people I'm working with? How can I expand? Who can I work with to expand? But then traditionally research has been 50 pages of reading and only accessible through maybe government websites or accessible through other means. So you find the small organizations and the smaller communities now, because you see a trend in where communities are now eager to learn more about their context, because they need to communicate their context to donors or to government so that they could communicate their needs to them and their needs can be catered for. And that led me to now setting up a research firm, research with a touch of ICT. The reason why I emphasize on ICT and innovation in research is because it's about time we share data, it's about time we share our findings, and the best way to do it is to use the technology we have available to us. And the best way to do it is to communicate it in the simplest way possible to communities. I've worked with communities in the grassroots where they create their own data, and this data is used to complement national statistics, and which can be able to, even Africa-wide, if you think about it, if we work with communities to generate their own data that can be used to communicate the needs as they change, and this can be used for them to change the environment around them. So this was what really motivated me to start working with research, with data. And also the main key thing is, in the past, research has always used the respondents as specimen. We never really engage them and make them feel part of the research process. So I'm also keen on participatory approaches that has really improved the quality of data we get, because once you feel like you're part of the process, that's when you're able to tell the truth in a safe space, and that's when you have sustainability of research projects, because a research project should not just end at the end of a funding period. Communities should take it up and continue coordinating that data and continue improving the quality of data we have to better make decisions in the government level, the corporate level, and the development sector level.
One of the major ideologies that have been out there now for decades has been the notion that we're stronger together than we are apart. And that while regional integration is very important, that continental integration is a promising possibility. Some people are skeptical, some people believe. And one of the people who believe is seated here with us. From the home of Pan-Africanism, the Black Star country of Ghana, the home of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, we welcome a Yali Fellow who works with the African Union. And I want to ask you about this notion of this idea of Pan-Africanism, and not just as an abstract idea, but I want to ask you, as somebody who's very well aware of the technical specifics involved in that idea, can you share with us why you believe that continental integration, that a Pan-African nation of states is possible?
On the eve of the first meeting of the African independent head of state, led by Kwame Nkrumah, the whole idea was to have a United States of Africa at that time. But there were forces that ought to be fought in order to be able to achieve that. As at that time, many of the countries were yet to achieve independence. So they redirected the focus and began to work on achieving independence for every African country. As I speak now, this has been achieved. Then, on the eve of the 50th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity, we realized that in as much as we're able to achieve independence, it's now important for us to achieve the economic freedom of our people, because we realize that poverty, hunger, disease, conflict, these are things that have characterized the continent lately. And to be able to forge on, to have one country, it was important to have these issues addressed. And one of the surest ways to have it addressed is to create an economic environment that allows every citizen of Africa to flourish. And so they created the Agenda 2063 of the African Union, which essentially seeks to provide a transformational space for the African. So if you look at that plan is really designed to have United States for Africa in the next 50 years, by 2063. Now, the question is whether it is realistic or achievable. Your guess is as good as mine. The debate continues. If you ask my personal view, I think that the leaders are taking the right steps at this moment to make it realizable. They've just created last year the African passport. The head of states of Africa have already been issued this passport. The hope is that very soon, every citizen of the continent will have the opportunity to apply and have the African passport. If this happens, you and I can have access to each other's country within the continent without the challenge we used to face. So for me, that's a big step. The next thing is the creation of the African free trade space, which allows each African to do business within the continent of Africa. And what it means is that will promote trade among ourselves. And that in itself will foster again about the continental unity. So you realize that over time, this vision is achievable. Of course, there are a lot of work that has to be done. Some of the countries are not stable at this moment. We hope and work hard to ensure that we achieve total stability in order to grow and develop.
Whether or not one agrees or disagrees with you on whether the United States of Africa, as it were, can be achieved, one thing all of us agree on is that unity is very important, both within our states and between our countries. And with that, I want to thank all of our Yali Fellows who are not just the ones on the stage, who were gracious enough to bless us with their insight, with their experience, with their presence, but also those who are not here. And I just want to say that what's common between everybody here is progress for Africa. Whether it's in ICT, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in education, whether it's in the public sector, private sector, everybody wants progress for Africa. And on that, I salute all of you. My name is Ajuri Ngelale. Until next time, lead where you are, and followers will find you.